The courtroom was silent. The judge leaned forward, his fingers tapping the bench as the defense attorney walked to the center. In his hands, not a pile of documents, not a witness statement, but a single printed sheet. "This," he said, "is the analysis that proves my client's innocence?" Everyone expected a forensic report, a handwriting test, maybe a DNA result, but the paper came from something no one in that room had ever faced before: evidence generated by a machine. The case had already drawn public attention for weeks. A man accused of corporate fraud, millions missing, data trails erased. Investigators had worked for months, tracing digital footprints across thousands of transactions, but the defense team claimed the entire pattern was wrong, that the prosecution's conclusion was based on human error. So they turned to something faster, colder, and far more precise. The lawyer pressed a button on a large screen beside him. Lines of code and transaction maps began to appear. "This analysis," he explained, "was generated by an artificial intelligence system trained to detect anomalies invisible to human auditors. The machine had processed 2 terabytes of banking data overnight, something a human team would take years to complete. And it found something no one noticed: a transfer initiated not by the accused, but by a software glitch inside the company's own accounting system." Gasps filled the room. For the first time in this country's legal history, a defendant's freedom was hanging on evidence that no human had personally verified. The prosecutor rose immediately. "So you're telling us," he said, pacing across the floor, "that this entire defense is built on a computer's opinion?" "It's not an opinion," replied the lawyer. "It's data, pure, unbiased data." But the prosecutor wasn't convinced. "Can your system explain how it reached its conclusion?" The defense hesitated. "Not exactly. The process is too complex to simplify, but the accuracy rate," the judge interrupted, "that's precisely the problem. How can a court trust something it doesn't understand?" The courtroom murmured. A journalist in the back whispered, "Is this the end of human judgment?" After hours of deliberation, the judge returned. He looked exhausted, aware that whatever he decided today would make legal history. "The evidence presented by this artificial intelligence system is compelling," he began, "but the court cannot rely entirely on something it cannot question or comprehend." Then, in a surprising turn, he continued, "However, its findings have raised enough reasonable doubt to reconsider the charges." The gavel struck. The defendant was free. Outside, reporters rushed to broadcast the headline, "Machine Analysis Overturns Fraud Case." Within days, legal scholars were calling it the trial that changed justice forever. Weeks later, talk shows and law schools everywhere were debating what had just happened. Was the court right to use artificial intelligence-generated evidence? Could lawyers now start submitting automated analysis as proof? One law professor put it perfectly: "We've always trusted humans to interpret machines. Now machines are starting to interpret humans." Governments began drafting emergency regulations. Some argued that artificial intelligence should only assist lawyers, never testify through data. Others said this was progress justice evolving with technology. But something else started happening too. In smaller courtrooms, judges began asking their clerks to use the same system for case summaries. Then, a few months later, another judge admitted that he had used it to help draft his verdict. Slowly, the line between assistance and influence began to blur. Now pause for a second. That entire story, the courtroom, the lawyer, the verdict, isn't fiction in spirit, because parts of it are already happening. In 2023, a judge in Colombia publicly admitted to using artificial intelligence to help write his decision in a medical case involving a child with autism. In the United States, lawyers have already submitted AI-generated documents in court, some even containing fake citations, leading to penalties in China and the UK. Courts have started accepting AI-analyzed surveillance footage and facial recognition results as supporting evidence. So the story you just heard isn't from the future? It's a mirror of what's beginning right now. Can a judge rely on a system that no one fully understands? Can a lawyer defend a client using data no human personally reviewed? And if a machine ever makes a mistake, who do we blame, the programmer, the lawyer, or the code itself? The justice system has always been about truth, But truth now has a new translator and made of algorithms, not empathy. Maybe that's efficient. Maybe that's terrifying. But one thing's certain, the gavel might still rest in human hands, yet the voice that shapes the verdict could soon come from something that doesn't breathe.